So, Mark, I have been talking to some business owners lately, and I keep noticing this recurring problem over and over. And you've probably had this yourself. I've definitely had it myself, but it's this problem of things keep coming up in your business and they happen over and over. And you basically are focusing on this stuff you have to do that's urgent, that you can't get to all the stuff that you want to do that will make your business better long term. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
You sound like you do. Yeah. And so a concise way of saying that is that urgent reactive work keeps you from important proactive work. Urgent reactive work keeps you from important proactive work. And this has definitely happened to me lots of times. And so we've kind of developed a system with my company Knapsack that we've kind of built over time that helps with this. I want to share a little bit about that today. Another way I like to think about this problem is you're too busy putting out fires to kill the dragon. So imagine you've got like a bucket of water, you're running around, there's all these fires being lit around you, you're dousing them out. Maybe it's a client that's angry at you, or maybe it's like a new system you need to set up or something like that. There's like these things that are urgent that you need to do, but you're not doing the stuff that would actually fix those problems once and for all, because there's a dragon standing beside you or behind you going like lighting all these fires, right?
And you're running around, you're trying to dump buckets of water on this fire, and so you can never stop and sharpen your sword to kill that dragon.
Exactly. There's a dragon right there, and it seems like, it would be common sense to actually take care of the real problem, but you're just literally too busy putting out the fires to even think about it, right?
Right.
So I think that happens to a lot of people, and that's why a lot of times their businesses don't grow, or they're stressed out. They're working more than 40 hours a week, trying to make their business work. And it's just because they haven't taken the time to get to the real root of the problem. So this is my team at Knapsack. And so in a typical week, we might have, like let's say on a Monday, Savannah, a problem comes up. She notices there's something with one of our clients where, oh man, like this problem happened. How can we avoid that in the future? Or Joy has an idea like, hey, what if we implemented a new CRM that would make it easier to track our clients, or maybe Whitney notices a problem on the SEO side of things. We're like, oh man, we need to fix this. Or Lauren has an idea about, hey, what if we did this so that our new designs are even better than they used to be? So, all throughout the week, people are thinking of these ideas or noticing problems, but we don't have a great system to actually make progress on these because we're literally working on client work all the time, So we don't have downtime where we're like, all right, cool, let's take time and figure this out. So
yeah, and I that's been, I think, one of my biggest struggles, and it's something that I recently, have stopped and thought, like, why am I not growing?
Right.
Like, why is my business not growing? I keep hiring people to do work, but we're not growing, and so it's made me pause to think, like, why is that? And I think that's it, because when I started hiring people, it was, hey, come in and now help me put out these fires and spin these plates.
Yep.
But not, let's focus on how we grow this thing and make it better.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's important to, this is a big problem, and a lot of businesses need to solve it, but they need to have a system to solve it so it keeps being solved and isn't just a one-time thing like, okay, let's just try to fix this problem so it goes away forever. But you need to have something built into your business that happens every month or every week so that these types of things can be solved and fixed. So what we decided to do is, you look at a typical calendar, we've got 5 days in a week. And so we thought, what if we could actually block off one entire day every week to work on this? So that's what we did. We said every single Friday, we are not doing any client work. We're actually going to put on our website, we are closed on Friday. So now we're just open Monday through Thursday. And on Fridays, our phones don't ring, or we don't check email, other than Joy, who's our main contact. But for the most part, we're not on email or anything like that. We're working on any client projects. We're just focusing on how can we make Knapsack better? How do we make it, a better company, basically. So we call that the Friday habit. And that's, as that's where our podcast came from. That's the whole system is around creating a habit out of setting aside time to actually work on your business and making it a real priority so that you can actually grow for the future.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of those things that if you don't set the time, you'll never have the time.
Yep.
We only have as much time as we allow ourselves to have, and so I think, being intentional about that, like you said, you're only open Monday through Thursday.
Right.
And so you've said, no matter what, this is a priority. And so I think it's similar even to going to the gym or working out or doing like that, right? It's it's you make the time. Like we have as much time as we allocate. You know, people are always saying like, "Oh, I wish I had more time. I wish I had more of this." Well, just create that time.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. I mean, you do have it. Everybody has the same amount of time.
right?
It's how you spend it and how you prioritize it. So a couple things real quick before I jump into the details here. I want to share a little bit of like, why would you want to learn how this system works? What benefits does it have? So why would you want to do the Friday habit? One is it's going to help you be proactive every single week. You're also going to make learning automatic. So you're basically learning new things, you know, without even trying in some ways. You're going to turn your ideas into action. So when you discover something new, you're not just like, wow, that was an awesome book, but you're actually going to make that into something that changes your business. It's going to help you fix recurring problems. So things that keep happening over and over and over, you're going to have the time to actually fix those so it stops draining away your energy. It's going to also help you make decisions consistently. And it's also going to help you protect your team's time so that, you know, if something comes up in the middle of the week, it doesn't distract them from their client work either, because that's also important. You need to have that time set aside for client work. But it's going to protect their time so that they know later on they have time to deal with fixing the bigger problems in the business. So first I want to tell you about the 5 key habits, the main habits, right? And then I want to tell you about basically a more practical, like how do you actually make these happen in your business? How do you set aside the time? Because it's like one full day a week, that's 20% of your time. Like that's a lot of time to give up for something that is not directly making you money. It's like, okay, I could be using that whole day. That's another 8 billable hours in theory I could be doing, right? Like, is that worth like giving up to do something like this? So I'll kind of cover how to methodically set aside that time. So 5 key habits. Let's just jump into these real quick. So 5 key habits are learning, capture, review, decide, and act. So these all happen in order. So it's kind of a linear process that happens. And these are 5 habits that you basically want to make each one of these things automatic each week in your business with each of your team members. So this can work, you know, as a solopreneur or as somebody with a team. Most of the stuff I have here covers more like the team aspect of it, but really a lot of this stuff can be done on your own as well.
Yeah.
It also helps when you have a team because it can protect their time as well.
Yeah, it kind of gives you a framework to wrangle everybody and to have everyone moving kind of in a certain direction and, you know, working towards a specific thing and understanding the framework that you have so that they all know what their jobs are as well.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let's jump into each one of these. So let's start with learn. So first foundational thing, basically the idea, you know, with a habit is you want to create something that is going to happen automatically over time. So a few things, you know, obviously with learning, the main thing is that you just want to actually be out there discovering new things you might not have known about before. Like problems are going to come to you automatically, but the learning and new ideas might take some intentionality to go out there and find stuff to learn from. So you probably have some ways that you like to learn things every week. You know, for me, it's definitely picking podcasts that I know they have great guests on, you know, because I want to keep that automatic every week. So it gets delivered to me. I don't have to think about it. I just have to listen to whatever comes to me if I've already chosen a few podcasts. I also like to listen to audiobooks during certain things, like if I'm washing the dishes or let's say I'm out like mowing or something. Like I have these times set aside and they're like, hey, during these times I'm going to actually learn something new. So I have some of these habits set up where it's like, oh, these things come to me, or maybe it's a weekly email list, you know. Do you do anything like that to like learn regularly every week? Do you feel like you have systems set up that kind of help you automatically learn?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have channels I subscribe to on YouTube that are educational basis, you know, that are focused on education and business education. I also listen to audiobooks as well, and then podcasts. You know, the Friday Habit is an amazing.
I've never heard of it.
It's an amazing podcast. You should really check it out. Two handsome men talking about how they grow and manage their businesses.
I'll check it out. It sounds fantastic. Yeah, so learning is kind of the first habit. It's foundational to make sure that you're intentionally learning new things all the time. But, you know, I think a lot of people are good at this one already. A lot of people, as entrepreneurs especially, are just really curious people. So lots of people kind of have this one down, but I find a lot of times it stops here and it doesn't get much further. So let's talk about the next habit. So the second one is capturing. So learning is great. Maybe you're listening to an audiobook, you know, whatever it might be, but what happens sometimes is you don't actually capture that idea that came up there's no way for you to actually look at it later and make a decision about it because you didn't capture it. So
this is one that I'm terrible at, and you're so good at, which I really appreciate and inspires me to be better at, because I love learning and I love educating myself constantly, but I don't always take what I learn into action. And I think you do a really good job of learning something and at least just trying it, like, all right, I read this book or this process. Let me at least just try it.
Right. Exactly.
I'll get inspired and then I'll be like, all right, I don't take this, this next step is not something that I'm constantly, doing. So,
yeah, I think one of the keys to me is having a really specific way that you capture ideas, because sometimes people might write it in a notebook one time, but they put it in a random note on their phone another time, and there's no set aside time where they know they're going to actually look at that again. So capturing it is almost meaningless, because if you just write it down and never look at it again, does that even matter? So what we've done with our team that I think works really well is we use an app called Slack for team communication. We've created a channel inside of that that everyone can see whenever anyone on the team thinks of an idea of like, oh, hey, maybe we should update this portfolio page on our website because of, whatever, or hey, maybe we should update our cleaning checklist in the office because we noticed that this one thing isn't getting done, every time. So it's a recurring problem. So anything like that, we just throw in this channel, and then everything in that channel, I'll get into that more later, but we can discuss it and decide what decision to make and what to act on. But the cool thing about putting it in Slack is that you pretty much always have your phone with you. So there's a one action you need to take at any moment to write it down. Other thing that's cool is it shows up for the whole team. You could do something like have a whiteboard at the office where you capture things. Problem with that to me is that you're not always at the office to write on your whiteboard. If you're mowing your lawn and you think a business idea, then it's like you're going to forget it before you get back to write it on the whiteboard, right? So to me, it's something that everyone can see immediately, because it also can spark other ideas, so that by the time you come around to review it, maybe somebody's already seen your idea and built on that idea. So I recommend using some type of team place where you're going to see it right away and then also be able to reference it later. So that's the capture step. I think that's critical to kind of making sure that you're actually taking your learning and turning it into something. So habit number 3 is reviewing. So basically all these build on each other. If you stop at any point, it becomes kind of meaningless, right? So it's like all 5
habits.
Jenga. Right. If you pull one out, it's all going to fall down, right?
Yeah.
So review is critical. So this is where it starts getting into the Friday time, because learning and capturing, that can happen anytime during the week and will happen anytime during the week. In order to review everything, you need to set aside time so that you have a habit of actually looking at all these things. So at Knapsack, what we do is every Friday at 10 a.m. we have a team meeting. It's pre-scheduled on the calendar. Everybody knows it's happening. We always have it in the same room. Everybody knows 10 o'clock we're going to start looking at our list. That list is literally copied and pasted from that Slack channel of every idea that everybody wrote in that week. We take it in there, and then we basically, one at a time, whoever brought that up or typed it in there, say, oh, what was that about? Tell us what you were thinking. And they say, hey, yeah, I was thinking about this, and here's an idea I think we could improve. And then we say, okay, cool. Like, what do we think, or if it's a problem, like, what do we think the root problem of that is? And we kind of get into discussing, like, start asking more deeper questions of like, oh, is that just because it was a one-time thing with this one client, or is that a thing that we should fix for every new client so it never happens again? So we get into like reviewing it as a team basically, and get everybody's input that makes sense to have their input, and make sure that we get their thoughts on it. But having that set aside time, 10 a.m. every Friday, is just invaluable, because then you know exactly what's going to happen. I think you can also have somebody on your team compile this, so you can preset like, oh, this person on my team is going to compile the whole list and bring it together. And then that way it's kind of systemized. One person is responsible to kind of bring that up. So yeah, that's the review step. All right. And habit number 4 is deciding. So once you've kind of had this discussion and said like, oh, here's the possible problems that it is, or possible solutions, then it's time to actually decide and make decisions on which things to act on and which things not to act on. So for example, you might have, let's say you had 5 things that you discussed or reviewed that week. You need to decide which things are a priority. So, okay, this week we need to fix these things. You also need to decide who's going to do each one. And you need to decide, things like when it's going to be due and stuff like that. So in order to take all these ideas and turn them into real action, you really need to define the person responsible, when it's due, and, the priority basically. So if you can do all those things, then it's going to make it much more easy to actually turn into something real.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something we do as a team, is decide all that. That usually happens in that same meeting, you know, so maybe the first hour we talk about, review all this stuff, and then we make decisions during maybe the second hour. It's not that formulaic, but sometimes we even make decisions right as we just review it, because it's like we're already talking about it, let's decide what to do. But then at the end, we kind of need to decide what the priority is, you know, because we might decide, yeah, we need to do this next week. And then we get to a bigger problem, like, okay, that actually needs to get bumped till like 3 weeks from now before we can do something about it.
Now, how do you capture that, or how do you, prioritize those things as far as that goes? Like, is there another list or another place where you assign tasks and make sure that people are on top of what they're assigned to and due dates and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, we do have like a list of like action items right below our list of, basically we have discussion topics or items to review, which are all the things that were captured. Right below that we have action items, and we literally just, it's kind of like a Google Doc. We use Dropbox paper, but basically we just write in there like, here's the action item we're going to take, and then who's assigned, what date it's due, all right there. And then we just have a running list of those. And so then next week, the cool thing is, when we have our next week's meeting, we see all the action items we decided on last time, and it keeps us all accountable to make sure, did we actually do the things we said we were going to do last week, or did those get like pushed off for some reason?
And then why did they get pushed off?
And why did they get pushed off?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we use, for our Friday Habit, we use Asana, and we've kind of created like a Kanban board or Kanban board, depending on where you're from.
Yeah.
You know, I know some people who say it a different way.
Kanban.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But anyways, that allows us to have like our ideas, and then move an idea to like doing, and then, or to offload it to a future date, or to done, as things get completed. So it's kind of more of a visual way to manage that.
I think it's a great way to do it. And I think it's really all about just making sure that it's really clear who's doing what, when it needs to happen. It doesn't matter what system you use. There's so many ways you could do it. I think everybody probably will have their own preferences with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And the other thing, just to bring up, since we're like talking about it, is we don't have our meeting on Fridays. We actually have it on Wednesdays. Because Wednesdays seem more conducive to our business and our client workflow and schedule. And so, but we, do shut it down and say Wednesdays are, no ifs, ands, or buts. This meeting.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I know a lot of people that follow the Friday Habit will do it on Monday, or I know some other people that do it on Tuesday, do like Team Tuesday, it's what they do. Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't really matter what day of the week it is. Obviously it's more about like setting aside the time.
The Friday Habit just sounds catchy.
Yeah, exactly. Who wants to do the Monday Habit? That sounds lame.
Right. It's like, oh man, the Friday Habit sounds like there might be some sort of happy hour or something involved.
Yeah, and I personally like Fridays just because I feel like we're wrapping up the whole week, and it's kind of this whole segment of time where it's like, all right, how did this go? Let's talk about, evaluate how this week went, how things go. So yeah, personally it works for me, but I think every business is different. And I'll get into more also if you're the type of business that can't shut down for a whole day, because there are some that like if you have a retail location, you can't be like, cool, we're closed. Well, technically Chick-fil-A does that, but I'm not saying that every business should be like shut down that much of the time. You know
the
what I mean?
Sunday Habit.
Right. Yeah. So
also known as the Sabbath.
The Sabbath. Yeah, exactly. So I think that, it depends on the business a little bit on which day you do it and all that, but I think that's a really good point to bring up. It doesn't obviously have to be Fridays. So that's kind of like in this time, typically we usually do about 2 hours of a meeting when we're doing the reviewing and deciding piece of things. The last part of this, the final and the fifth habit, is acting. So is actually doing the stuff we decided we needed to do. For us, that means Friday afternoons are blocked off entirely. So we have 4 hours basically on Friday afternoon that it's just devoted to anything that we made decisions on that are kind of quick wins or can fit in that time frame. Then we're going to just knock them out that day if we can. Or maybe there's something left over from the previous Friday that we had decided wasn't a priority until later, so we're knocking that out. But our whole team basically can spend the whole Friday afternoon either collaborating together to work on these things or working separately depending on what needs to be done. There are often some, tasks or projects that are way bigger than what you can do that Friday afternoon, obviously. So the key with those things is to just make sure that you actually put them onto the calendar. There's this whole concept of putting in the big rocks first, this analogy or this concept of like, if you have this big bucket and let's say you fill it up with sand first, like, and it's like halfway full of sand, then you try to put all your big rocks in, it's not going to all fit. But if you put your big rocks in first and pour the sand around it, then it perfectly fits everything. And it's kind of amazing. And that's kind of how it works with your calendar too. If up front you actually schedule out your proactive work you need to do, then you can actually get these big projects on your calendar and fit your client work around it. So it's really important to schedule those out ahead of time. If it's important to get it done, block off the calendar and then actually be true to that and respect it as a team. Make it part of your culture, that it's not like, oh yeah, we scheduled that, but it's fine, we can do it another time. No, treat it like it's a client project where if you didn't show up, your client would be like, what the heck?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you need to take it seriously. Like, you wouldn't do that to a client. Like, don't do it to yourself,
Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's that compound effect, right? Like, the more that you do it, the more that you make it a habit, the more you'll start to see results, right? It's just like going to the gym. You maybe at first it's like difficult and you don't necessarily always see the benefit or results for going to the gym, but over time you'll start to see things happen. You'll start to tone up, drop a few inches, off your waist and whatnot. And then you're like, wow, I'm so glad I made that a habit. I'm so glad I consistently did that. And I think it's the same thing with the Friday habit, where at first it might seem difficult, to like, how do I block off this time, and make this happen? And then it's like a few weeks in, you might be like, is this even beneficial?
Right.
But over time, you'll start to see like, oh wow, like I'm being more efficient. I'm finding problems and solving them quicker. I'm, growing and able to spend time brainstorming marketing ideas and putting energy towards things that are actually going to cause business growth. And I think that that's, invaluable. So, and I think that's one of the things I love about the name, the Friday Habit, is that habits, they're not easy. Habits are something that is going to take an effort to create. And so I think that's, part of this is creating a new habit for your business.
And it's vital. I like what you said about how it can be hard to get started. It's kind of like when if you go too hard when you first go to the gym, this is what I always do. It's like, oh, I'm going to tear this up. I go to the gym and I work out and like, I'm wasted for 5 days afterwards because I should have started slower and not gone all out. And then it's like discourages you from working out. So I actually want to get into that because I kind of cover here, like making the time. And this is kind of like easing into it a little bit. Like, don't go crazy at first because it might be a lot to bite off at once to say like one full day a week. So to make the time, this is what I recommend. I recommend you start with 2 hours a week. What I would do at that time is have your weekly review meeting, which is your 10 a.m. to 12. What we do during that time is basically review all the things that were written down that week and then make decisions about them. And you can basically take some action in that time if you have the time. If not, then at least schedule it on your calendars for the future to take action on those items. So if you can start with just 2 hours a week, even if it's 1 hour reviewing just one item or two items and knocking them out in that second hour, just start really small. So the whole goal with that is identify things that you can eliminate from your schedule in order to buy yourself 2 more hours so you can get to 4 hours. So look and see, like, what are the repetitive things I keep doing that are keeping me from even doing the system? Like, how can I actually implement the system? So spend 2 hours a week just figuring out how can I buy myself 4 total hours. And basically that's the first goal, is to try to figure out, okay, what are the things I'm doing that maybe aren't adding as much value as I thought they were? Where can I speed up efficiencies? But I would make it about making your business more efficient first, because then it's going to buy you a little time that you can save for Fridays. So second step, I would say, do that. I mean, it varies for every business, but just as a rough guideline, let's say do that for like 4 weeks. Do 2 hours a week for 4 weeks, see what you can eliminate, see if you can buy yourself 4 hours every week. Then go ahead and jump up to that level, go to 4 hours a week. And then in that time, kind of follow the same methods. Now you bought yourself a little bit more action time. So you're not just reviewing, but now you're going to actually take a little bit more action on that day. And then eventually, maybe another 4 weeks, you can jump up to 8 hours and go ahead and make the full leap to having a whole day a week. So that's the way I recommend to do it, is just kind of do a little bit at a time and kind of ease into it. That way you can kind of not overwhelm yourself and get crazy sore and never want to go back to the gym. Right. So another thing I wanted to bring up is what we talked about, where some businesses can't do this, a full day each week. So what I would recommend doing is do 4 days out of the week, just do 2 hours a day. So it still gives you 8 hours a week. It's still 20% of your business's time. And what I would even do is just go ahead and do this in the mornings. You know what I mean? Schedule a little time in the morning where, okay, cool, 8 to 10 a.m. Like maybe every Monday you meet with your team, 8 to 10 a.m. You have your meeting, and then the rest of the week you have 2 hours every morning scheduled out to like, hey, I can take action on this. So your whole team knows we're not doing client work until 10 o'clock. We focus on ourselves first and make sure that we're actually doing this first. I mean, to me, this is a similar concept to like self-care, self-care for yourself, making sure you're eating healthy, making sure you're working out. Like you got to put yourself first in some way or do something good for yourself, or you're not going to be around to take care of your family. So same thing with your business. Your business is not going to keep existing if you don't actually focus on yourself and take care of yourself, So I think just even doing that first thing in the morning, 4 days a week for 2 hours each day will still get you 20% of your business's time, even if you can't dedicate a full day.
Yeah.
That's the idea. Block off 20% of your business time, hopefully 1 full day a week. And if I was going to leave you with anything, I would say stop putting out fires and start killing dragons.
I love that. Okay, so here's a recap. We want to learn. We want to immerse ourselves in new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
We want to record new ideas and problems.
Yep.
We want to review those ideas. So we want to discuss each item as a team or something that if you're a solopreneur, you just do that on your own. And then we want to decide, we want to, create some clarity, get clarity on what we need to do next, not just, have a great list of things, but actually put some due dates and what we need to do.
Yep.
And then act, right? Number 5, block off time to take action. So you can't take action if you don't have time to take action. So we got to block that time off. For our listeners, what would be one great takeaway action item for them to do this next week? Yeah.
So what I would do is go ahead and download our guide. There's actually a whole workbook that we created that goes along with this whole system. So it even has some self-evaluation questions, a little questionnaire to help you see like how good are you at each of these different things right now and what are areas for improvement, like what are ways that you can develop these different habits. So I download that. It's at thefridayhabit.com. And then, if you want to keep up with us, what we like to do is we talk about ideas every week that you can actually implement into your business. So basically we have a podcast, the Friday Habit podcast. We're throwing out these ideas. So it's a great way to make learning automatic in that first habit we talked about. So if you listen to our podcast, maybe you'll get an idea, write that down, talk about it with your team, and maybe that becomes part of your business.
Yeah. And we also interview, thought leaders and other people who have maybe gone through, what you're going through and can offer you some inspiration and motivation and whatnot. So, well, cool. Ben, thanks for sharing the Friday Habit with us. And, thanks so much for listening. Like, subscribe, follow, do all those things. You won't regret it.
Start killing some dragons.
You won't regret it. Start killing those dragons.